A sale is 100% contingent on the buyer wanting it. And you have to have demand for your business. If you wait to try and, increase your price, you run a huge risk of not being able to do a deal at all.
You have questions about selling a business. We have the people who've been there. This is Business Answers with Tommy Boyle.
Welcome to the Business Answers podcast, where we look at the personal impact, both positive and negative, of growing a business, and in particular the experience of exiting a business. I'm Tommy Boyle. This episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Colm Lyon, one of the founding figures of Irish FinTech and a man who in 2015 sold Realex Payments to Global Payments of Atlanta for $115 million, in what remains one of the cleanest and most admired exits in the history of the Irish technology sector. Most people in his position would have stopped there. Colm did the opposite. He carved a small piece of Realex out before the sale, a business called Fire, and for the last decade, he has been quietly building it into a regulated payments institution that now operates in both Ireland and the United Kingdom. He is the founding chairman of the FinTech and Payments Association of Ireland. He sits on the UK Finance Payments Board in London and was given the Outstanding Achievement Award at the National FinTech Awards in 2023 for his contribution to the Irish FinTech ecosystem. And not insignificantly, he was the student class rep for 3 years for the BCom class of 1984, when he and I both studied commerce in UCD. To talk about what it actually feels like to build, to sell, and then to start all over again, here's the founder and CEO of the Firecom, Colm Lyon. Colm, you're very welcome to Business Answers, and thank you for giving us your time today.
Thank you, Tommy. Pleasure to be here.
Welcome to the Business Answers podcast.
Colm, was it always your ambition to set up your own business?
I would say that from a relatively young age, I was very keen to be my own boss, to try and do something where, not that I wouldn't have to be told what to do, but try and do something where maybe I could set the direction to steer the ship a certain way. So it was always a dream to be able to do something like that.
You were in Ulster Bank for 14 years.
Yeah.
When did the bank stop kind of being enough?
I think the bank was a super experience in terms of when I started my career in the bank. We didn't have desktop computers, for example. We had a calculator in our desks, an inbox and an outbox. People came and collected the left paper for you. Obviously, the stage of automation came, and I remember programming in different languages at the time, in Fortran, COBOL, Pascal, whatever. There was the different exposures that I had to the technology. And then as technology took over, it was really interesting to see the level of automation and the level of change that businesses underwent at that time. It was really phenomenal in terms of the changes that could be made. And I got to see the treasury side of the bank. I wasn't involved in the retail side. I was involved on the capital market side of the Ulster Bank markets. Throughout those years, I got exposed to different projects. You would have been a business analyst, was the official title that you would have had. And then as you progressed over the years, you became a project manager, and you were responsible for delivering really technology solutions that would transform and re-engineer the way in which the business operated. And that was really quite fascinating. And it also got you to learn about the different products and services as well. And so you learned about the treasury operations, the foreign exchange, and then later on asset finance, leasing, because you had to implement technology solutions that were going to help these functions run. And you could remember how, before we did these kind of projects, particular part of the organization, you could see the customer's name and address being stored 17 times or whatever. So when a customer changed their address, you'd got a lot of systems and things to update. And so you learned about the normalization of data and bringing things together, data in a structured manner, and then being able to layer applications on top of that. And you learned I had a superb boss in there who taught me about, managing the project and how to manage issues and risks in a project, and how to, I suppose, create the vision of where you want it to be. And then people would buy into that vision and that journey with you, because it's never easy or straightforward to implement change of that nature. But it was a great upbringing. And then,
how did Realex come about then, Colm?
Yeah, towards, I guess, 1999, 1998, the euro had come in as a currency, although not yet in notes and coins. And the millennium bug was imminent at the time. And I remember just looking at the internet and, again, you get quite fascinated with the things that you can do. You could take a picture of the tall ships when they were in Dublin in 1999, I think it was, and you could email it to your brother in America, and you could have as a screensaver on his desktop a couple of minutes later. And it was like, this is quite incredible, We don't even blink at that nowadays. I remember speaking to people on the card side of Ulster Bank at the time, and they had merchants who were selling in the traditional way. And these merchants wished to sell online. And they were, how do we give them a solution that would allow these merchants to be able to accept credit, debit card details on their websites in a secure way? The cards were never designed to work in that fashion. So there had to be something that had to sit in between. And then, I worked on a project to do that in Ulster Bank for a while. I had considered different potential opportunities all around the internet space. And then I felt that this one was one where the banks might be slow to maybe implement the necessary technology to allow their merchants to sell online, that the merchants wouldn't want to build the infrastructure themselves. So there was a classic kind of knot on a bow tie type situation there where you could make it easy for the businesses to sell online, but at the same time, you're making it easy for the banks to transact with those companies. Both sides would be happy with you being in the middle, which is often a great place to be,
Yes. Owen O'Byrne would appear to be a big part of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How would you describe your relationship with Owen?
Owen and I started Realex. Well, I started for about a year and then Owen joined, and then I would spend the time kind of documenting, if you like, the data model, the structures, what the system needed to do. And then Owen would have the technical wherewithal to create the software to make that work.
Very good.
So we knew it was a good tag team in terms of just being able to, and then I would test that after got it done. So I was more the business analyst, tester, and then he'd be writing the software in those early days.
So you built it up to be fabulously successful, and by the time of the sale, you were processing more than 28 billion a year for over 12,000 retailers. What would you think made the business so attractive to global payments? Was it the technology or was it the customer book?
Yeah, I think we were, 14, 15 years in operation, and many of the original team, Owen, myself, and the management team stayed with the business for the full journey. What we found was that businesses, wanted to sell online. We were providing the solution. The banks wanted to acquire those transactions and wanted to make sure that they weren't losing out. So we were able to help them. So we were able to scale up. And then towards the end, we had a few financial institutions that would white label our solution. And the distribution capability then also got large. When you find to have a good product, it's often the distribution that can be quite difficult to get. So with the distribution by these acquirers that we had who were white labeling the platform that we had, we were able to kind of accelerate that growth. I remember we had what is it that you need to be successful in the payment processing space? And you need to be kind of constant, reliable, and secure. 3 big words that we used to go around in our head the whole time.
Very good.
And how do we behave like a big company when we're a small company? And how do we build infrastructure that somebody will be almost jealous of, right? And we did that because we had a falling outage one day, which lasted for 6 hours. And we never waste a good crisis, if you like. And
yes,
we had a really bad time because we had, and so some days we could have upwards of 2 million transactions coming through the system, with big volumes. And people were depending on us to do their trade, to do their business. It could be Aer Lingus with a ticket sale. It could be Paddy Power with a match on. Didn't matter. Like those volumes had to be processed. And so when we had the outage, I remember we kind of became quite determined as a team to make sure we never had this again. And so we built one of the first live configurations where we had 2 physical locations where we had all the data, and we put in our own private fiber between them as well as an internet connection between the 2 of them. And we were able to have a 20 millisecond synchronization, and we put in 3 of everything into each site. And then we got our own IP addresses from Ripe. So we were like an ISP on the internet, which meant as well that we were able to take down an entire data center. Back in those days, there was no cloud yet, right? So
yes,
we were able to take down an entire data center and the service would stay running automatically, And when we sold, what was really interesting was the potential buyers used to come to our office on Sir John Rogerson's Quay, and they would come in and they would look at the system, and the functionality was all fine because you were authorizing and you were able to do all the value-added services for the merchants. But when they saw up on the huge big screens that we had, the 2 data centers going green all the time, and I remember one of them saying, "Gee, Hank, we don't have this back in our operation."
Yes,
like this is something.
It was very clever, very clever.
Yeah. And the thing that we did was we used to monitor the transactions from our key clients, and we would have for each one a threshold and a frequency with which they would be sending transactions to us for authorization. So it could be like, say, 4 a minute for one client, or it could be 20 a minute, depending on who they were. And what we used to do was we used to have them up on another screen where we would list them all down. And if we didn't see a transaction coming through outside the threshold, it would go orange. And then if it went to 2 or 3 times that, it would go red. And then we could call them and we could say, hey, we're not seeing transactions coming through. Is everything okay at your side? And I remember the amount of times that we would call people and they'd say, oh, thanks, we had no idea our website was down. Yeah. So that was a great way of making sure, And then I think they just loved the traditional card acquirers at that stage, had great solutions in place for stores and shops and, card present, what we call card present. But they didn't really have the solutions in place for the card not present and for the e-commerce world. So what was amazing about Global Payments was they were able to take the Realex platform and that Realex gateway, and then they made that the gateway for all of their e-commerce card processing across the world. So Realex became a mega piece of infrastructure for global e-commerce, which was great to hear.
So you sold in March 2015, and as I say, for 115 million. Describe, Colm, the feeling the day the sale was completed, the day the money landed in the account. What was that feeling like?
I guess the overwhelming kind of sensation you have is relief, that it's over the line. There was a lot of people, obviously, shared in the outcome. We had no VC or PE involved, so it was private. And many of the people that had invested in the early days in the BES scheme got a good reward for their early stage investments, which was wonderful to see, and the staff as well.
And what was it like in your house that evening, with you and your wife?
It's amazing. Like at the same time, life goes on because it's that freedom, the sense of independence, perhaps. But I think predominantly you get a great sense of relief as well. And the relief that you've got a home for the business as well, and a home, that's a good home for the staff and for the customers as well. It's a holistic kind of feeling that you feel it. It's never really about the money per se. It's about the outcome that you've managed to get to this point, And
obviously all of the staff, they were well looked after and all of that. And that obviously sounds that was very important to you, wasn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I mean, you never do these things alone. And you've got great support from your team, from your family, whatever. And you have to realize that it's an outcome and you're very fortunate to be in that position, as I say. But I do recall that sense of relief. And also there's an element of relief that tomorrow I don't have to worry so much about the operation of the business, because you're very involved as a CEO. And, if you're responsible for running a business and you're responsible for the processing of large volumes of payments and that, you don't have a quiet moment to yourself. So you suddenly realize as well, God, I was doing so much and my mind was like completely taken up with a lot of stuff that was going on at the time. So I do recall that's kind of a welcome sense of relief, that this is now done and it's in the right place, as well.
I know, Colm, you said before that prior to that deal that you had turned down a huge UK bank earlier in the journey. Looking back, was that the right call at that time, or?
No time's a bad time to sell your business. Like if you get the opportunity to sell your business, I would always encourage people to do it. I know there's some commentary sometimes that Irish businesses sell too soon. I don't think that they sell too soon. They certainly sell early in the process. But whether that's too early is, I think, the question. And I don't think it is. I think that we're in a part of the world and we're in a certain economy here where, if you get the opportunity to exit from the business, I would take it, I think it's very important.
It's also when is enough enough, when is enough enough? There's an element of that too.
Yeah.
That 115 million in that context, though, was that the right number, Colm? And again, I don't know how it played out for the purchasers, but, if you had waited another 5 years, would the multiples have been completely different, or will we ever know?
I don't know. I mean, as what we call a gateway-only business, so a pure technical business, I always felt that if it was to really scale up, it would need to become a regulated business as well, and it would maybe need to get into the card acquiring itself.
Yes.
So I felt that and also the card acquirers, the big ones, there's 4 or 5 huge ones across the globe. The time would come where if we didn't sell to them, somebody else would sell to them. And then the number of potential buyers would start to diminish.
Of course, absolutely.
A sale is 100% contingent on the buyer wanting it. You know what I mean? And you have to have demand for your business. If you wait to try and, increase your price, you run a huge risk of not being able to do a deal at all, And what you're selling, what I like is the idea of not so much selling a business for its core financial value, but selling a business because it's got strategic value to the buyer. So in other words, when you have something that somebody else wants to use.
It's the growth potential they're buying, isn't it?
Yeah, and the synergies that they get from that and the ability to upsell what you've got to their customer base. That's a huge, huge opportunity. And many times in the financial services and in the payment space, you find that the big companies are really good at distribution and they've got great products and services and a very large base of customers. But when it comes to making new products, sometimes it takes a little bit more effort and they're slow because they've maybe got to keep the operations, the resilience, the compliance, of their own tech in order. And therefore, they don't get to make the stuff that maybe the smaller companies can make. So it's a very natural thing in the payment space for smaller companies to empower big companies and smaller companies who've made nice product to empower big companies with distribution. And that works really, really well as a partnership. And then over time, if third parties are successful, the big companies will buy the spot.
Buy them out. Exactly.
Yeah. So I always saw it like that because we weren't going to become an independent, scalable company, where we were. We would have needed a lot of money to scale up Realex as an independent financial, company.
Yes. You're not unlike the oil prospecting companies that are bought out by the big majors then when they strike it. You know what I mean? So that's how that works. So obviously you've earned a life-changing amount of money, Colm. So what's kind of different about an ordinary Tuesday compared to an ordinary Tuesday in 2014 before you sold out?
Not a whole lot, really. Yeah. if I'm honest, it's fine. It's there. It's great. And yes, of course, you've got that sense of financial independence, which is fantastic, wonderful to have.
Are you enjoying that success?
Yeah. I mean, it gives you a great opportunity. Like what we did was we set up an investment office, to manage that. One of the things that's great, I think we've invested in over 22 different startups now, and that's been a great thing to do. And we're also a limited partner in 5 different VC funds who in turn invest in startups, and a lot of those are Irish-based companies and Irish-based funds.
Mostly in the tech sector, are they? Or
yeah, tech, and we're in one biotech, medtech fund as well. So we would diversify where we can. Some of those startups are fantastic and it's good to be able to help people. I tend not to give them advice, but I tell them a story, about maybe what happened. And they can take from that whatever is good or bad for them, because it's important not to be too opinionated about what's right and wrong these days, because you just don't know.
Did you treat yourself to anything? Have you a garage full of cars somewhere or a holiday villa?
No.
Is there any niceties got out of it?
No, I mean, it was like, life goes on basically.
Yes.
As I said, you got that buffer and you're very aware, very conscious of that. And that buffer gives you an independence and an opportunity to be able to do things that you haven't done before.
Most people who'd sell a business might stop, but you certainly didn't. And you had already carved fire out of Realex before the sale. So you went straight back to work. What was the reasoning behind all of that?
Work is an interesting word. Like you have a choice there as to, to do something or not to do something. So you're not doing it for money. For me, I've always been really interested in the changes that are coming in the way in which people pay and get paid. There are some kind of deeper, important issues here in terms of the accessibility, for example, of different payment systems. And a lot of it is dominated by banks, obviously, or, the primary institutions that hold accounts and process payments. And there's room for a lot more players in the industry, and there's room to bring in a lot more innovation and competition into the industry. So back when we set up Fire, I was really interested in this idea of people paying for goods and services, either at point of sale or online, and paying directly from their account rather than with a card. Because the technology has changed now so that you probably have 2 or 3 bank accounts on your phone, right? And everybody does nowadays. So, but yet when you tap your phone at a device, there's a token created of your MasterCard or Visa card, and it's sent all the way through 4 different parties to go around to eventually take the money out of your account to eventually transfer it to the merchant's bank account, right? And in reality, we don't need that anymore. In reality, we can actually instantly move the money from my account to the merchant's bank account. That's technically possible now. And you're seeing those trends emerge. Obviously, it's emerged big time, places like India and Brazil and China. And now we're seeing it starting to emerge across Europe, places like Spain and the Netherlands, and also in Poland, where we're seeing different localized, what are called account-to-account based payment methods emerged. And so I got to join the UK Finance Payments Products and Services Board as well after the deal was done. And that was really interesting because even yesterday now and today, I had calls with like the Bank of England and also the PSO and the UK, the Payment Systems Regulator. And I'd be feeding back to them about potential barriers that I might see, which hinder startups and scale-ups from entering into the payments market and bringing products and services to market. So it's important, albeit quite niche, that somebody takes on that mantle and helps the regulators to inform their policy with regard to making sure that new players can come to the market, that people want to invest in creating new products and services, that they're able to bring these things to market without unnecessary burden in the way. And I don't mean regulation, because regulation pertains to everybody. That's fine. But this is not, so it's not about regulation and the regulator. This is about accessibility to the different payment systems. So I've taken the mantle on that over the last few years, and I enjoy that. It takes a long time, but I can see how things are changing and people are open to those discussions.
Do you see FIRE being as successful as Realex, Colm?
Potentially, and it's hard to know at this stage. There are a number of trends which are, I describe them like waves coming in. And sometimes you think it's a big wave, but then you realize it's not. It's small and it's far out. Yeah. By the time it gets to the shore, you're very disappointed,
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, oh dear, I'm not going to surf that one. So I think that and we can't really control the rate at which the market might adopt something. We can be ready for when we think it might happen, and we can be positioned. So positioning is really important. And what I'm building at the moment with FIRE, what we're trying to build here, is similar infrastructure. It's a product play, and it's an account, or a whole series of accounts, an embedded account that sits between businesses and financial institutions. The account can be used for a whole range of different purposes, but primarily we see people wanting to embed, if you like, the functionality of an account into their own systems. So in other words, as a financial manager, you don't want to be logging in to see if you've been paid. Right? So why do I still have to log into my bank account to see if I've been paid? If I walk into a restaurant, Google will tell me I've been here 4 times in the last 3 years. So
yes, yeah.
How do I do that? So with FIRE, obviously, it's an API first account, payment services associated with it, and businesses can open thousands of accounts if that's what they need, all with an individual IBAN, sort code account, sterling, euro. And every time money hits those accounts, we automatically update your system and send you messages so that you know. And you can use the API to, do payments out. You can do payments out in different currencies. You can receive money in different currencies. You can get a debit card. You could have thousands of debit cards if that's what you need. You can change the account to which the debit card is linked through the API. You can block a debit card instantly through the API. So it's to give people the ability to embed the functionality of the account, the payment service, into their own system. Spot on. Yeah,
very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So that's one of the big trends. The other one would be the account to account. I think account to account will come. I'm not too sure about this, exactly how far out that wave is, but I've seen it in Zoom in Spain is a great example, and Blick in Poland is another example where banks collaborated together. It's really interesting to see the Irish banks with ZipPay getting the first phase of a new payment method potentially into the Irish market, which would see that then if in the evolution of that could actually mean that you could walk into a store someday and you're going to pay by ZipPay, and you're going to pay directly from your bank account. Right. And again, this is the whole trend I think that we're going to see. The digital euro, the ECB are pushing that, probably motivated by payment sovereignty, because they want to have a non-US based, they feel there's an over-dependence on Visa and MasterCard. So the digital euro is another really interesting one. And I think that will change the way in which people get paid and pay out. There's the AI then. I mean, we've had so many people in the last just couple of months, it's been bizarre, who have completed integrations into FIRE using Claude and never coded in their life before.
Yeah.
So they've developed a piece of software, right?
What's happening with Claude is just mind-boggling. It's absolutely, on a daily basis.
It's quite incredible.
It's mind-boggling.
Yeah,
it really, really is. But so fascinating and so brilliant. What a tool to have at your disposal.
Yeah. And what we're finding is there are loads of people out there who are all of a sudden released from the traps. right? Because they now have this tool available to them. They're able to develop bespoke software for their customers, right? And what they've done is they've incorporated fire into that. And what they're doing is they're saying to the customers, go open up a fire account. Because if you have one, then you'll be able to see all your balances, you'll be able to open up all new accounts, you'll be able to get webhooks every time your debit cards are used, to be able to send out invoices and put payment links on it, and you'll be able to, have your customers automatically pay, and then we'll be able to update everything when they pay them. And so we were finding that then the AI is
propelling your business, is it? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not so much for us using it, which we do, but more for a new breed of platform, a new breed of software developer out there who's now really keen on using Fire and integrating Fire because it makes their software better,
Very good.
When they can do that. So
is the goal, Colm, a second exit, or is it to build, Fire and kind of run it for the rest of your career? Or
it would be the same strategy that we are building good product. We built it to a high spec, all right, as always, the platform. And it's got like a lot of automated services within it. We don't use any third parties to run the core platform. We just do it ourselves. And so, we would be hopeful into the future where we have some good case studies up there on our website, where one of our big clients, for example, is AIB Merchant Services, which is part of the Fiserv Group. And they have, thousands of merchants in the UK, and we're doing the settlement to those merchants on a daily basis for them. We've got some super customers now. We have another bank in the UK. They've launched an open banking payment acceptance solution. So in other words, they have hundreds of thousands of merchants. And now what Fire does is it enables that institution to go to market to offer open banking payment acceptance. So now their merchants can get paid directly from people's bank accounts as well. And so for us to enable those institutions to bring those products and services to market is fantastic. And we've got about €500 million a month coming in and out. So it's quite a large volume then of payment flow going through it.
It's motoring now, isn't it? Fire seems to be really...
It's good now. Like all these things, it takes time, and you've got to persevere. And, I did make a few distractions along the way, as you do. And now I think we're very focused on being that.
You're going to get distracted, and it's part of the makeup as well. We do tend to run after the shiny things every now and again, and we need to pull ourselves back again.
Yeah, we're delighted with where it is now.
But Colm, can an entrepreneur really retire?
I guess you could. There's a lot of other things to do. I think you would retire from, the operational side of what you do, but maybe not the strategic side, So you might end up in a position where you'd remain on boards, you remain as an investor. But it would be nice at some stage, obviously, not to have to worry about the day-to-day operations of the business. I think that's an ideal position.
I do it myself as well, but half the people listening to this will be kind of having their accountant in their ear saying, you should sell up and take a step back and whatnot. And most entrepreneurs, they wouldn't know what to do with themselves. It might sound a little bit attractive, but then when it comes down to it, more often than not, they say, well, I actually like what I'm doing and it suits me, and sure, what else would I do,
Yeah. I found myself recently doing some vibe coding myself, and so developing software now myself, which is really interesting. And then, as I say, with the investment office, then we're never going to be not busy. Do you know what I mean? Because we're always looking at opportunities, and we have a diverse range of different asset classes into which we invest, and restructuring that at the moment.
Would you encourage your children to start their own business, Colm?
I think owning your own business is, well, for me, it was a dream, and it doesn't matter whether it's big or small. It's that freedom to be able to make your own mistakes, to be able to just to do things. And, if you're fortunate, you do come out with a good financial gain, but it's a really nice thing to have, and the opportunity to have your own business, no matter how big or how small it is. I mean, it's just a personal opinion, do you know what I mean, that I certainly found that. And I think people are probably starting their businesses much younger than I would have. I was 38 when I left, the bank to start. And nowadays you see people very young starting businesses, and there's so many super kind of resources like Dog Patch and things available to them where, they can get the assistance, the support, the network and all that. It's brilliant to see.
I totally agree with you, by the way. Working for yourself and running your own business it's heaven, really. Someone actually, a relatively young person, asked me there the other day, they were thinking of going out on their own, and we were in company, and somebody said, well, what do you think, Tommy? I said, to be honest with you, it doesn't really matter what I say, because if you're going to do it, you're going to do it. It's irrelevant. So I'm not advising you one way or the other, because if you're going to do it, you're going to do it, But if you're going to do it, you're going to do it. But it's a wonderful way of life. But for the listeners, Colm, who are considering selling their business in the next 2 or 3 years, what 3 pieces of advice would you give them?
I would say, think about it early, put an actual plan in place to make the business integratable. So you have to make it as easy as possible for the buyer to be able to take what you have and for them to integrate that into their organization, right? So always think about that. So it's not so much what you're going to get, but what they're getting, right? And you have to make any transition or any carve out or integration as simple as possible, because often what might put a buyer off is the integration, and that the integration is too complex, too difficult, you know what I mean? And it's just not going to happen. So think like the buyer and try and get your potential buyers to be customers before you enter into any process, so they get to know you. So if you have a particular target area and you're thinking, I could sell to companies in this sector, well, see if you can get them as customers. Like, see if you can do something for them now, right, for the next year or two. And then lo and behold, you never know, they could turn around and say, hey, this is great. Like, you know, we really need this. Like, so the closeness to your potential buyers is really good. You could always think like a big company when you're a small company, you know, and you can behave like a big company when you're a small company. Sometimes when I see some of the companies that we're invested with, I would always encourage them to, look, maybe you need another director on the board to bring in a bit of governance and a bit of
objectivity and challenge, to
the team.
Yeah.
And your KPIs are, you know, they're okay, but like maybe they could be better, right? And maybe you could track something and really understand what are the critical things that you need to work on to make it so that the measurement of the performance of the business is very clear, so that we know. The most important thing is knowing what's working and what's not working, you know? And so do we know what is working and not working in the business today? And, you know, and if so, like, have a good chat about it.
I also know, Colm, you said that the worst thing a founder could do is kind of start conversations with potential buyers themselves.
I would argue that having an advisor, if you're trying to sell the business, is a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
But being one of those myself, I would agree with that.
Yeah. I just think that, like, it's not a process that you do that often, right? There is a great value in having a strong advisor, you know, who can help you navigate the process, for sure. You know,
if you were 38 again, Colm, and you knew everything you know about regulation and capital and competition and everything, would you start fire or would you do something completely different?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not too sure. You know, you like to kind of position yourself into a space where you believe there's an opportunity and you think you can make something to help with that problem, right? So I probably would be attracted towards sustainability issues, to be honest, right now, and issues of, you know, like, we're really screwed, like, when it comes to environmental things, and, you know, and I think I'd be zoning towards that side of the world right now and trying to find out or learn more about it, perhaps, you know, and seeing, is there something that we could make or do to try and address problems in that side of the business, that side of the system, yeah.
Lastly, Colm, what, if any, regrets do you have?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, you can kind of say that you know, maybe pivoting too easily, perhaps, instead of sticking to the core proposition and the core vision of your business, and just recognizing that takes time. But, like, there's nothing, you know, I was very happy that I left my job when I did. Of course, you could have left earlier, but, like, is that a regret? It's a different world now. The front of us, my God.
The clock is against us. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. I think anyone listening who's in the middle of building or scaling or, you know, wrestling with the question of when to sell or how to sell will take real value from your candor about the deal, about fire, about when the check clears, and what it actually means to keep going when on paper you never need to work again. So, Colm, many thanks. You've told a story that very few founders in this country have lived, and you told it so well and with such honesty. I have to say thank you very much.
You're very kind. Thanks a million, Tommy.
That's it for this episode of Business Answers Podcast. Until the next time, take care.
Thank you for listening to our podcast today. If you would like to find out more about what we covered in this episode, you'll find notes, links, and more in the description area of this podcast. Do remember to press follow for our show so you get the next episode automatically. Also, please do share with a friend who you think would find it interesting. Tell them to search for Business Answers on their podcast app. Our podcast today was produced by dustpod.io and brought to you by businessanswers.ie. Until next time, thank you for listening.